in order to be happy in life, it's really not about how much money you're making, but it's about the person you believe, like strongly believe you are, and you need to match that image as close as possible. So the further away we go from the image that we've created for ourselves, we become, much more unsure, sad, and we don't even understand. We don't even realize why it's happening. If you think of yourself, I'm a great guy, or I work out, or I do this, and I don't, and then you don't do it. Trust me, you're going to hate yourself.
All right, our guest today is Hyperson COO Hristo Arakliev, and Hristo is the co-founder and COO of Hyperson, which is a top-tier Amazon marketing agency based in Sofia, Bulgaria. That's over in Eastern Europe. They help brands worldwide double their current revenue by utilizing Amazon as a sales channel. He's a serial entrepreneur, an Amazon marketing specialist with a passion. He's a dad. He's a voracious traveler. His various business initiatives have varied from brick and mortar establishments to tech startups. And in the past 7 years, he became an expert in Amazon growth hacking, a CRO, as well as building successful sales strategies. Outside Hristo's Hyperson duties, he's also a musician, avid sports enthusiast, engaging in many hobbies like hiking, extreme sports, and as I mentioned, traveling to exotic locations. He's going to talk about something that kind of blew me away about midway into the episode, talking about the images that we create for ourselves about ourselves. You're not going to want to miss that. And then he also goes into some of his favorite books towards the end of the episode that I think you're going to love. I also talk about a couple of my favorite books that are must reads too. We'll see you on the inside. So Hristo, welcome to the Second in Command podcast.
Hey, Cameron, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I've been a fan of Second in Command for a while, and the reason being, honestly, I think it shines a light on the role that often goes unsung, but is absolutely crucial.
Good. Well, that was the whole point of starting it 8 years ago too. I really wanted to give some light to the role. I wanted to give some exposure as to the difference between the COO and the CEO, and then also just to highlight some great brands and some great leaders globally. So I'm glad to have you on. And you're actually out of Bulgaria. Are you based out of Sofia, or what city in Bulgaria are you based in?
Yeah, correct. In Sofia, all the way here. It's kind of exotic for Americans, but it's actually a very good spot right now.
Well, I'm from Canada, from Vancouver. I've got a good friend of mine from Vancouver who travels there quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to learning from one of the leaders from the region.
Awesome.
So
Happy to share my thoughts.
yeah, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about Hyperson, what it is you do as a brand, and then we'll kind of dive in from there. I want to talk to you about people and operations and your role as a second in command and co-founder. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about the business itself?
Absolutely. Well, Hyperson is a full-scale Amazon marketing agency. We focus on helping cool D2C brands that are already successful in their field and they're driving traffic to their website. No matter how they're driving the traffic, it might be like with Meta or Google or Instagram, TikTok, influencers, but they are already generating some substantial revenue, at least 300,000 a month. And what we do is we take these brands and we take them on a journey to expand their exposure to Amazon, and we help them double their revenue over the course of 10, 12 months working together. So that's in its core is Hyperson.
Interesting. So I coached a business that it's in similar in the space, I think. I don't need to mention their name, but they're based out of Colorado. They actually inventory the product for their customers as well. Do you inventory the product, or are you more just kind of the marketing side of things for the brands?
Well, logistics is the only thing that we don't do because, from experience, always something goes wrong when you deal with logistics. So, we're focused on marketing support. We help with inventory planning, but not with, being in charge of inventory.
And that's the least kind of interesting part and the least fun part of their business too. I never really understood why they decided to get into that. I think if they stayed away from that, they could be even more successful than they are. How did you start the business? You guys started 7 or 8 years ago, right?
Yeah, something like that. It started, my journey to CEO has been far from traditional, I'd have to say, and it's given me a bit of an unconventional perspective on management and leadership. And I am a strong believer in the idea that every COO needs to be a bit of a psychologist, part strategist, and at times even a firefighter. But above all, we're here to serve and enable people to do their best work. And today I'm excited to share some of the lessons I've learned from the trenches and from some incredible mentors in person and in books. Um, so first, I actually want to talk on the topic of leadership
Mhm.
and servanthood. So one of the ideas I often come back to is this concept of servant leadership. I believe in leaders who are both humble and have a fierce resolve. It's not about being the hero, it's about empowering others to be heroes, in my opinion. And there's a very cool quote by Simon Sinek. He says, leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. And I think that's where COOs can make a massive impact. We're not always at the forefront, but we are the ones ensuring the entire machine is running smoothly so that everyone else can shine.
Simon was on our board of advisors back in 2004 when I was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So 20 years ago, 5 years before he wrote the book Start With Why and before he did his famous TEDx talk, he was on our board of advisors. We spent a lot of time with Simon. Um, where did you get exposed to servant leadership first? Was it the book Servant Leadership, or was it just in general, kind of listening to other leaders?
It was the book, but in general, listening to other leaders has also been a big part of it for sure.
What do you think what
So
does it mean to you specifically? Like, give me an example of something that you would do where you see yourself showing up as a servant leader versus more of the, do as I say leader, which is kind of the 1970s style, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I was a strong believer in building a culture of trust to start with, and I often think of Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety. She talks about how important it is for people to feel safe, to speak up, to make mistakes, and to learn openly. It's something we strive to cultivate within our team, to be honest. And people sometimes underestimate how much productivity and creativity are driven by this feeling of safety. You can't expect people to bring their best ideas to the table if they're afraid of judgment or failure. And my job as a COO is to make sure that fear doesn't live in our organization. And from experience, I can share. I remember reading A Radical Candor by Kim Scott, I believe it was, where she emphasizes the idea of caring personally while challenging directly. It's a bit like walking a tightrope, you have to strike this balance. If you lean too much on one side, you're just nice but ineffective. On the other, you're a dictator. It's about building that environment where honesty is not just accepted, but it's expected. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I talk about being firm but fair, right? That we kind of have to walk that tightrope, but you really want to be nice and caring for people. How do you open up the I guess the lines of communication so that you can get feedback from your direct reports? How do you open up so that they can tell you where do they want Hristo to improve, or where do they want Hristo to give them more?
Okay, that's a great question. Um, well, I invite them very, very openly on like a friendly conversation to have together. And even though um, I, I'm usually not really good at giving feedback, and it took me a while to be able to do it properly because my brain works in a way that I always see what's not right with something, and I always focus on that. So how I change that is by asking more open-ended questions where I can see first how people approach that situation, if they see the problem with it at all, and then afterwards talking about how we can fix the process and the system rather than telling them, that's not the best way that you've done something, or this is not the optimal way of doing things, or maybe there's a better way of doing it. It's more focusing on how we can fix the process, and I see them opening up much more this way because now you're not challenging what they did, but you are challenging the process as a whole. It's kind of, you tell me, you tell someone, but someone else has to hear it. It's I think this this is the right way to do it, because even if in my personal relationship with my wife, when I challenge her directly, it just doesn't work. It needs to, it doesn't work. It never works, and it gets worse. And you know, it's the same with employees. They cannot say it to you directly, but they got pushed back and they close up, and it's it's not working out for anyone.
You said something interesting around leadership, that at times you're a bit of a psychologist and at times you're a bit of the firefighter. How do you slow it down enough to recognize that it's time to be a bit of a psychologist? Or how do you slow it down enough so that you do remember the people side of all the situations and you can play a little bit of the psychologist, or you can think of the people side more? Is there anything you specifically do, like to get your mindset, or to, get your frame ready when you're dealing with a conflict or a tough situation?
The approach that I currently have is, again, when you're inviting people, it needs to be really laid back to start with, because if I call on someone and I'm like, I need to speak with you now, it's uh, it's really not setting you up for success. So I really try to be super friendly with the team, and I see some positive sides of that and some negative, but we have built a culture where we are more of a friends rather than something else. And I see people feel very comfortable sharing with me all kinds of stuff, because I'm not going to judge them. We're going to laugh about it, and we are going to find a way to solve it together. Which brings me to the fact that when someone asks me, how do you make people accountable? I just hire accountable people. I think it's very important to make the right hire, because if you don't hire accountable people, you're always going to have issues down the road. You cannot teach someone to be accountable. Okay, maybe you can, but it's going to take you a lot of effort, a lot of time, and you don't want people that are slacking. You need to lean on trust, and this is where it all starts. And having that basis, when I invite someone to speak with them, first of all, I try to make it a group conversation most of the time, because again, when you sit directly and talk with someone, he is always kind of on the fence. He's prepared to be attacked, and he thinks that he does something wrong, rather than opening up the discussion with the team that he has worked on a certain project. And then we start discussing, and I can be the psychologist without them even knowing I'm doing it, because I let them share, I let them discuss. I ask them, was that, now in hindsight, was that the right thing to do? Does that make sense?
It does. And it's interesting because you mentioned Simon earlier, and one of his books is Leaders Eat Last. I've always said that the leaders speak last. And it seems like you're that kind of a leader, that if you're speaking, you seem to be asking questions and understanding, versus the command and control leader. So I think that that group kind of not group mentality, but that group focus tends to work well for you. Can you speak to us a little bit about how you lead teams and lead people, how you personally do that? Do you have any thoughts around leadership, more than just the authentic leader side, or the kind of supportive leader?
It's very important. Like, the time management and delegation are
Mhm.
crucial. And as COOs, our plate is always full. And if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will, um, you know, do it. So I think this is especially true in a COO role, and delegation is one of the hardest skills to master, but it's absolutely necessary in my opinion. I had to learn to let go of perfection and trust that my team could do things differently and sometimes even better than I would. And when you do that, you start focusing on what truly adds value. I really encourage other COOs to actively delegate not just tasks, but ownership. Give people the freedom to make decisions within their roles. And when people feel like they own their work, you get much more than just compliance, you get commitment. And I can give you an example. So we hired a few months back a guy from the Philippines, and he was an Amazon expert. He's been in the field for 8 years, and he had a lot of knowledge. Okay. But before that, we had conversations within our team that we are actually going to promote our senior account managers to account directors. And all of a sudden, just this perfect guy showed up. We hired him, and oh my God, it was a disaster. So they could never open up to him. They were always pointing out the smallest of mistakes he was making. Anyway, we ended up firing him for different reasons. And afterwards, we changed our approach and we actually created the account director position. And this changed everything. Like the account directors, they opened up, they started caring more, they felt much more appreciated. Now I don't, there was one girl, she was like a dark cloud. And I'm like, what is wrong with that girl? I mean, she's a great employee. And all of a sudden, when we empowered her and empowered the whole team, she changed completely. Like she's a different person now. She cares, she asks questions, she sees mistakes, she's like super proactive. And you know, it's very important.
I love that. I love that whole thought process behind it too. And I love your thoughts around delegation. It's one of the core 12 modules in my Invest in Your Leaders training is delegation. And you're right that people don't know how to do it. They're not very good at it. But I love that you not only delegate projects, you delegate the responsibility and the ownership. Can you speak? How many employees do you have at Hyperzone?
Around 45 right now.
So how, with that many people, how do you prevent yourself from getting sucked into the day to day? How do you prioritize your focus and decide what to delegate and what to keep?
Oh, that's one of my favorite topics, actually. I live my life and strongly believe in the fact that keeping the balance in every aspect of your life is crucial. You also need to be able to balance between systems and flexibility. One of the biggest challenges for any COO is balancing structure and flexibility, and you need systems, processes, that's a given. But you also have to recognize that each team member is unique, and what motivates one person might not motivate another. And I've been recently obsessed with the following idea about OKRs. The idea is to look at it as a flexible framework rather than a rigid system. And the goal is to measure what truly matters and then give people the autonomy to reach those goals in their own way, not necessarily follow a strict, like, you know, how we've mapped it out. And actually, a recent tweak we made to our process was implementing a feedback loop that isn't just top down, but also bottom up. And I wanted to understand what's working and what's not directly from the team. We added quarterly push checks, which gives us a real-time read on team morale and any bottlenecks. And honestly, it's amazing how a small shift like this can make people feel heard and valued. But again, speaking more on the topic of balancing your life, like I have many friends in different positions which are entrepreneurs and they're making tons of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in profit for themselves. But I have a few that are extremely unhappy about their life and about everything. They work 18 hours a day, and they share with me, I don't enjoy being anywhere. I go to the most expensive restaurants in Switzerland or in Dubai or whatever, and I don't feel anything. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying my life. And then I started talking with a friend of mine, George, and I was asking him, okay, do you like yourself when you see yourself in the in the mirror? Because he is not in his best shape, let's say. And he said, no, I don't like myself. And I'm like, in order to be happy in life, it's really not about how much money you're making, but it's about the person you believe, like strongly believe you are, and you need to match that image as close as possible. So the further away we go from the image that we've created for ourselves, we become, much more unsure, was sad, and we don't even understand, we don't even realize why it's happening, you know.
Wow.
If you think of yourself, I'm a great guy, or I work out, or I do this and I don't do, and then you don't do it, trust me, you're going to hate yourself. And I'm going to say a quote that I love, and for many years it was actually showing up on my phone every single day. And it's, one day when you're about to die, the person you are is going to meet with the person you could have been. And then you'll know hell.
Wow.
So that's
That's heavy.
that, yeah, it is. But so the choices we make in life matter. Like every little choice matters.
This is a really, really profound concept. And I don't know if I've ever heard anyone talk about it before. It's really like the image that you've created for yourself. If it's different from who you really are, that's what really starts to trouble you. And it's really
Absolutely.
like, I just went today and I grabbed a box of pasta, handmade, right in front of me. I only had to pay €6 for it. It was one of the best meals I've had in months and months. And sitting here with a bunch of students at this little pasta window in Siena, Italy, going like, this is amazing. Like, I felt so good. And that's who I am. I'm this kid from a small town in northern Canada, and I can be a successful business entrepreneur, or whatever, but I felt very congruent in that moment with exactly who I am, right? And but wow, what a really interesting challenge for somebody to think about. Like, who are we? Who is our mask at work and our mask that we're showing up with? And are we really the same behind that mask as we are?
Yeah.
So
And doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as we are true to ourselves, I think this is the only way to be happy, is if you are true to yourself.
yeah,
I mean, you might not be the best husband, the best team leader, the best son, whatever, but as long as you're true to yourself and you're happy with the goals that you set for yourself and the image, I think you'll be fine and you will be happy in general.
do you talk to people that work with you about that concept? Is that some of what you work with people at, or is that just more of a way that you lead yourself, do you think?
It's more of a way that I lead myself. Honestly, I haven't opened up with them about that topic. I think it's gonna be more of a burden to them if I put it in a working conversation, to be honest.
I don't know.
So I haven't, you know.
I've done it a couple times with people in slightly different wording. I had a woman who worked with me years ago who every time she would stand up and address the group, she kind of put on this professional face. And I'm like, who are you? Like, I've seen you every day for the last 2 years. You're a different person than this, like, hi, my name's so and so figure that you would put on. And I think her team sensed that. I think the people around her sensed that they got the everyday version and then this stand-up version. And once she could change that a little bit, I think that connected her with her team a lot more. I've also spoken to a lot of people when they do keynote speaking or public speaking, and I've said, you've been doing speaking since you were 2 years old. Don't try to be a professional version of you. Just stand up with the confidence and with your normal energy and your normal intonation and your normal domain expertise, and just talk like you would talk to your friends, versus being this, because your voice doesn't translate. But I guess that's only a tiny little snippet of what you cover.
I agree with that, but I I think, and I've seen people don't deal very well with failures. And I think this is more our role, the leaders. I believe in cultivating resilience and dealing with failures. And I think one of the unsung qualities of a great COO is resilience. The role requires you to be okay with things not going as planned and being willing to adapt quickly, and the importance of being able to pivot. Sometimes the best laid plans will fail, and it's your job to make sure we learn from those failures rather than letting them define us. And I remember a project we launched that was supposed to streamline operations, but in the end added more complexity than we anticipated. And it was a humbling experience. I'm telling you, we had to admit it wasn't working, scrap it, start fresh. And I think that's key, having the humility to say, this isn't working. Let's go back to the drawing board. But I can see how we can do it as managers, and we have to learn to do it as managers. But still, for most employees, it's a hard concept, and they prefer to stay in a safe space. It's not like they don't like to challenge themselves, but they still want to be challenged in in a limited kind of space still. When once you open up too much about such topics, at least my experience is that most employee are really not don't deal with it very well.
Yeah, I think these are more discussions, and they're more coaching opportunities for senior leadership and for leaders that are already going to that next level, right? They've been leading companies and teams for 10 years, et cetera. I'm curious about some of the Amazon side of your business, and I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. First off, are your clients mostly in Europe, or are your clients mostly in North America?
They're mostly in North America. And the reason being, trust me, I've tried working with Europeans, but they're just much more difficult to work with. Like, decisions take so much time. They have trust issues. So everything is happening really, really much slower than working with North Americans. And when everything's like snap, 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 and only if you fail at something, then it's a problem. But it's more of a, I'm open to your suggestions. You are the expert. Show me what you got. And as long as things are going in the right direction, I don't have any reason to tell you not to do it. This is how it's going on with our US clients and Canadians and in general.
Do you know any Amazon agencies that focus on authors, that just help authors sell more books on Amazon? Or is that a product where the margins are so low that it just doesn't really lend itself to your space?
I don't really know of agencies. I know people that are self-taught authors in a way. It's not like they are releasing a profound book that becomes a bestseller, but what they would do is they see niches, like for example, keto diet was very popular a few years back, and they would go and they would release 20 different keto books under different monikers, and they will generate quite a substantial revenue this way. But I don't really know of agencies that work directly with others. I think it's just it's much different, much more difficult. You operate from a completely different platform. The KDP is just no. I don't have anyone.
We're just curious. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who did something in the paleo space. Mike Geary put out a lot of cookbooks in the paleo space and crushed it on Amazon. And I have a person that I met the other day who does a lot of direct consumer and is doing Amazon now. And they were considering expanding from the UK to the United States. And I'm like, stop. Like, the UK is a pretty big market if you just own the UK market, and Germany is a pretty big market. Do you help any of the US brands sell into Amazon in Europe at all? Or again, is it mostly, US brands selling only in the US?
Yes, we do help US brands in Germany and the UK and sometimes in France even. But it's always taking quite a lot of time because, Americans are kind of afraid of Europe because it's far away, it has different administration and this and that. I mean, they're in the right, to be honest, and it only helps us that we're on this side of the ocean, that we know how the administration works. We have connections for each part of the puzzle, like logistics and accounting and dealing with Amazon Europe and stuff like that. So actually, if some of our clients decide to go to Europe in 3 months' time, we could be already selling. If they try to do it on their own, at least a year. I mean, it's a lot of bureaucracy. It's a clunky system. You need to know which buttons to push to make it work.
Yeah, I just see that Europe is such an untapped market for so many. That's so much less competition. I don't think there's much price competition. And if you get to 100 reviews, you own the category, but you need to get to 1,500 reviews in the United States to even be considered in the category. I just think that people are missing
Correct.
an opportunity.
And a cool thing is that the reviews are actually transferable. So once you've already sold on the US markets, and when you go to Europe, yeah, people can see your reviews.
Really? Holy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you immediately become the bestseller. I mean, they show up slightly differently, but still are very easily visible to the broad audience. So that's that's a game changer. And you know, many times you are, I don't know, number 20 in US, and you go to Europe and you're number one. It's just
I've coached a number of brands that were in the supplement space in Canada and the United States. One called Jacked Factory, another called Viva Naturals, and there were 4 or 5 that I coached over the years. But I always coached on the operations side of the business, nothing to do with selling on Amazon. I was working with them on growing teams and growing people and building leadership capacity and running meetings and planning and budgeting, kind of the real how to grow their company side. But it's amazing what they pull from you. Talk about how you differentiate yourself from other Amazon agencies. I know there's a bunch out there. I spoke at Ryan Moran's conference years ago to the Amazon sector. How do you guys differentiate yourself?
yeah, there are quite some agencies out there. Well, we differentiate in the following manner. First of all, one account manager with us works with no more than 3 to 4 brands. And this allows them to become experts in those brands. It gives them time to really go deep and see what the issues are, what the opportunities are. And, you know, this way clients are extremely happy and our churn rate is almost non-existent. Like we have clients that have been working with us for 5 years. It's just because things are very streamlined and they don't have to think about anything. And, you know, it's a kind of a cliche, but we really do care for their brands like they are ours. And we can see it from the testimonials that we receive. People are like extremely happy. They're like, you've already completed that task before me even giving it to you. And, you know, when we see that feedback, we can only feel happy and humbled that we were able to create such a cool agency. But again, many times I'm even considering changing the word agency to something else because there's such bad connotation with the agency word. Like agency has become a bad word. Honestly, I'm even about to make a post on that on LinkedIn. We have so many clients coming to us and they're like, we've worked with 3 other agencies. It was terrible. This is like the last chance that we're giving to an agency. It's you. Please make it work. And then we make it work and they're super happy. And basically they congratulate us most on communication. Communication is crucial. We're very swift to reply on Slack, and we have these weekly calls that I believe all clients should attend because the weekly calls keep everyone on the same page and things are moving smoothly compared to some business owners that are like, no, I don't have the time for these meetings, just write me reports and stuff. You need to care about your brand more than anyone else. So you're not allowed the comfort of saying, I don't want to get on these calls because it's a make it or break it for your business.
Do you see yourself as more of their partner and less of an agency then?
Absolutely, yeah. Because in our payment terms are also such that we work on rev share. So the more they're making, the more we are making. It's not a fixed fee.
Okay, so you're working on a rev share percentage. That's interesting. That's like a group I used to coach out of the US called Giddy Up Marketing, that does kind of performance-based partnerships or almost like higher-end affiliate marketing. Do you take a percentage of revenue? Do you carry the ad cost as well, or does your client take the ad cost on?
No, only for one client we carry part of the ad cost, but for all the others, they do.
And then
Which we take revenue from the top line revenue, meaning we are not removing the ad costs before taking that percentage. But still, it makes sense because over time we're making them a lot of money, and I have estimated that these 7% that we take out of the revenue, which actually we lower over time, but they always come up to anything between 23 and 33% of profits. But they're not moving a finger. We do all the legwork, so I think it's only fair.
do you take equity in any of your clients at all?
Every now and then. Right now, we are in the process of suggesting the following deal to one of our clients. Because they want to make an exit for like $100 million in 2 years from now, and they have a really huge potential because they're a brand that started from China, but they're selling now in the US and the UK and France, and they're very well positioned. And I'm like, how does it sound to give you a 30% discount from your monthly invoices, but you give us shares each month from your company for the same amount? So let's see what they say, but I think it's going to be a good deal for everyone because right now, as you can imagine, whenever a company is growing, it's tough to pay those monthly invoices for whatever you're paying, and you need to grow as fast as possible. So, and these shares right now, they're not worth so much, but in a couple of years, they're going to be worth a lot.
Well, and for the client, if they give you some equity in their company, they know at that point that you care more about them than anybody else, right? When you're really a partner, really embedded, who just going to give it, it's like 1 + 1 = 5. You're just going to care a little bit more than normal. Can you talk about the COO CEO relationship? Because I know you're also, operating as the COO, but you're also a co-founder of the organization. How do you and the CEO divide up roles and responsibilities?
Well, I'll be completely honest. We have a very, very uh, interesting and different structure. We are actually 5 partners in our company, and under this hat, we have multiple companies and multiple brands that we operate. So we have D2C brands of our own. We have crypto-related projects. We have the Amazon agency and some other things. And it's more of you deal with that project, you're in charge of it, you deal with that project. So we don't have that much friction in a sense because we are responsible for different things, and I am kind of taking part of the CEO responsibilities as well, and also part of the sales responsibilities. It's you know we we made it work. It was not easy. it was it was actually a serious challenge, but as long as there is trust between the partners, I think you can make it work.
Can you walk us through how you spend time then as the co-owner and how you spend time as a leadership team? Like, do the 5 of you have meeting structures where you're talking to each other as owners, and then where you have other meetings where you're talking as, more operationally running a business?
Yes, this is exactly how we're doing it. We have meetings that we discuss more like owners making more high level decisions. If we go in this direction and that direction, if we want to sell this business, if we want to grow this one, if we want to move some funds from one business to the other. And then we have other operational meetings, which are strictly operational. And again, when making the operational meetings, I believe that keeping it up to 2, 3 people is usually the most productive. When you start adding people to all these meetings, they prolong and they just take forever sometimes, and it doesn't make sense.
Have you heard of Jeff Bezos from Amazon? Have you heard of his rule around meetings? He said,
I'm not 100% sure, but
he said if the attendees of the meeting cannot all be fed by 2 pizzas, you have too many people coming to the meeting.
I've heard that. It's a good one.
And
It's a good one.
and it's a European sized pizza, not the North American size that feeds billion people, right? So it's like a real normal pizza.
Man, meals in the US are huge. When in Europe, me and my wife are going to split 3 meals between each other. When I go to the US, we cannot eat one meal between us two sometimes. It's just crazy.
It's
Like,
it's no wonder that they have they have a bit of a weight problem. All right, I want you to talk a little bit about your growth. You've clearly done a lot of work in reading a lot of books and growing from reading a lot of books. Where else do you learn and grow? Do you work with coaches? Are you in mastermind groups? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you just ask your team for feedback? How do you tend to grow yourself?
well, I had different approaches throughout the years. I've been part of masterminds, I've had coaching, etc. But recently, it's been mostly very well selected podcasts and very well selected books. Because I've read hundreds of books, if not thousands, And I love it when I stumble upon a book that is just so much better than all the other fluff out there. And I'm like, wow. I mean, it's disproportional. It's always super disproportional. There are books out there which are 100 times better, in my opinion, than all the rest out there. They're just game changers. And, it's worth it to read those books over and over and over and over again and live by them rather than just, listen to them or read them once and forget about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's some of the books that could have been written as 3 pages, right? Malcolm Gladwell is kind of famous for that. His books that it's kind of an idea that tends to go on and on and on, and then there's others that are just really concise and to the point, and they really kind of crush it with content. Have you got a couple that are your favorites that would be go-tos for you?
I absolutely do. One is Principles by Ray Dalio.
Of course, yeah.
And people should check 5 Moves Ahead. It's a great book. I cannot come up with the author's name right now. And another I would like to mention is Liminal Thinking and Hard Thing About Hard Things by Van Horowitz. It's an amazing book
Yeah, one of my
for
favorites.
leadership. And the last one I'm going to mention is by Chris Voss, and it's Never Split the Difference. This is just an amazing book on sales. When I say sales, we are always making sales in life. Whenever you're selling yourself to a client, or you're selling just yourself in a everyday situation, I think it's important to know which words that come out of your mouth are going to have the most positive outcome for you. So, and again, it's not. I am not saying it's about being decisive towards people, but deceitful. I mean, towards people, but it's more about still knowing how to get what you want to get. If that makes sense.
Yeah, Chris actually spoke at an event that I was at a couple of years ago called the Genius Network. I was in that mastermind for 8 years. I'll drop in the chat for you a list of my favorite business books. I'll also put them in the show notes so anybody listening can go to the link and check out my favorite business books. I tend to agree with you on. I like the ones that are very, very packed, full of good information. One of my favorites is Insanely Simple by Ken Siegel, and it's around the 10 core simplicity principles that Steve Jobs obsessed about to build Macintosh and Apple, and it's very, very transferable in kind of every company out there. So I check that one out. Insanely Simple is one of my faves for sure. I want you to go back and give yourself some advice, Hristo. If you were talking to the 21-year-old what would you tell yourself at 21 that maybe you know to be true today, but you wish you'd known back then?
Honestly, I don't have any regrets. So just keep doing what you're doing. I wouldn't change a thing apart from buy Bitcoin. I'm gonna tell you, buy Bitcoin. This is the advice that I'm going to give him. But apart from that, I honestly really live my life in a way that I have no regrets, and I think that this is the only way that you could be happy.
I love it. Well, and if you're not buying Bitcoin still, start buying. I've got my 2 boys, 21 and 23, buy Bitcoin every week. I've been buying and accepting it as payment since 2017. My posts in 2014 on Facebook, everyone laughed at me for saying I accepted payment in crypto 10 years ago, but now I kind of have a bit of a less laugh there. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, Hristo, thank you. You got the COO from Hyperson. Really appreciate all the time today that you spent with us on the Second Command podcast.
Thank you, Cameron. And if I can leave listeners with one takeaway, it's this: like, don't judge manage systems, manage hearts and minds. People are at the core of every process, every KPI, every project. And when you lead with empathy and purpose, the rest tends to fall into place.
Dude, that's huge advice as well. That's probably right up there with buying Bitcoin. So thank you for that.
Even if we're having conversation and he disagrees with me and maybe I did something that I was unaware of, or I screwed up or whatever it was, and he has to talk to me about that I still look at him as, this is my partner. It comes from a good place. It comes from a place of care, because we need to get better. And